The story of the penis is a long one. So let's start at the beginning. The very beginning of time itself.
About 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth formed, and then another 500 million years came the point where water began to condense on the early Earth. So the way I look at the early Earth was oceans, basically a global ocean, and volcanic land masses rising up. And sometime in maybe 100 million year time frame, somehow the first forms of living systems arose. The question is, how do these guys reproduce? And the answer is, mostly they just divided. So, that's what bacteria do today. Every 20 minutes, an E. coli can divide if the conditions are right. But let me point out that even bacteria have a version of what we call genetic interchange material, otherwise known as sex. And they have little tubules that link up between them, and there's just an exchange of DNA from one bacterium to another.
These tubules could be seen as the earliest precursor of what would one day become the penis.
Well, the evolution of intromittent organs like the penis or the claspers in sharks is because originally the oldest record of it that we have from fossils are these bony structures in these ancient placoderms that we presume were for internal fertilization. And they're developed from the same pattern of bones that forms the pelvic fins, which would later become the legs of higher vertebrates. So in other words, we're talking about sexual organs in the males. They're an offshoot from the leg skeleton. Later on, that attachment to the legs was completely lost as animals left the water, and it became a soft organ, but it's still genetically linked to the origin of limbs.
Okay, what's a penis? A penis is a structure specialized for males that is used to take sperm from the male's body and it deposit it into the female's body.
Theoretically, you could do that just with a simple tube. But yet when we look in nature, we actually see that penises can be incredibly varied.
Insects, for example, have penis-like organs, but they have a different name in biology. It's called an oedegis in an insect, but it's a sharp structure that the male can put inside the female to deposit sperm. It does exactly the same thing.
So in bedbugs, the males have evolved a stabbing penis, which basically they use to perforate through the female exoskeleton.
In other creatures, for example, barnacles, they have incredibly long, flexible penises that could be 9 times the length of the male, and they can shed them each year and grow new ones according to the environmental conditions they're in.
You find them in flatworms, you find them in snails, on the slugs, and the octopus, the squid. In the vertebrates, you have turtles and alligators and snakes and lizards. They actually have something called hemipenes. They have 2.
The Argentine lake duck have the largest penis known to any body weight of any backboned animal, a penis that can measure up to 42.5 centimetres in an average-sized duck.
These duck penises, they have a corkscrew shape, and the males ejaculate in less than 1/3 of a second. So that is extraordinarily rapid. I mean, we called it an explosive eversion because that is exactly what it is.
Then there's mammals, which we all know and love. Every mammal has a penis, but when it comes to penis diversity, mammals turn out to be kind of boring. The mechanism by which they make their penises erect, in that sense, they're all the same.
Mammals possess what is known as a vascular erectile system, as opposed to, for example, one powered by pressurized lymph, like the spectacular duck penis. This may seem elementary, but it wasn't always common knowledge. The Greeks were convinced that their erections were filled with air, like a lung. But as we all know, when the human male is aroused, it's a rush of blood that does the trick. And this is true for all mammal penises. Here, in the sleepy Arctic capital of Reykjavik, is one of the world's true connoisseurs of the mammal penis, a man who's given his life to the study of phallology.
Pip, 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 nis, 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 mu, mu, mu. Das Penismuseum von Reykjavik. Es brüllt das Meer in Grindavik, wirft Steine und Algen an den Strand. Aus tiefsten Tiefen treibt empor ein Blauwalmännchen hin zum Land. Pi, 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 nis, 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 mu, mu, mu. Das Penismuseum von Reykjavik.
My name is Sigurður Hjartarson, and I'm 72 years of age.
So how did this place begin with the idea of...
Well, it's a long story. I got the first one, this one. This is the first specimen. When I was a small kid, I was given a bull's penis like that, right, as a whip to take the cows to pasture and so on. So that was the first, and after I got the first, some friends of mine started bringing me penises from a whaling station nearby. And to start with, it was just a joke. But when I realized that this could be made a good collection, I intended to keep going and trying to improve it and so on. After you got all the Icelandic species of mammals, we started the foreign section. You can go on endlessly, you know?
Sometimes I got to go with him, you know, to cut off some whale penis at some, you know, beach out in the country. That was pretty cool for me as a boy, you know. In his nature, he's a teacher, you know, so he was always educating us, the kids, and everybody around him. So maybe that's the main difference compared to other dads, his need to educate everybody around him.
We have 19 big families of mammals in the world. Species within 8 of them have a bone in the penis. That's something people generally don't realize, how many species have a bone in the limb. And some of the mice, it's just a tiny 2 millimeters or something like that, with a bone of 1 millimeter. But it functions. And these animals are very fertile, as you know. So the size is not everything like some well, men or women like to think.
There's something in the human psyche that is ages old that has, as part of our interior understanding of the world, the primary organs of the body. You can see it in cave paintings from 35,000 years ago. An early interest in Homo sapiens sapiens, our species, in fertility, in the relationship between sexuality and life, and probably death. And you can find that all over the world.
In all Egyptian creation accounts, creation emerges out of a watery primordial oneness, just as they see the Nile flood each year begin to recede and the plants and the land begin to come out of the water.
So the Egyptians had a number of different creation myths that are actually based in various cities. So for example, at the city of Heliopolis, you have a creation based on the god Re-Atum. And he actually masturbates at the beginning of creation, and through his masturbation gives birth to the gods Shu and the goddess Tefnut. So that essentially you have one god that makes himself into many.
And at least one of those ancient gods sported quite a healthy phallus.
We do see phallic symbolism in ancient Egypt. One of the main examples is the god Min. who is another creator deity and is a god of fertility and particularly agriculture. And he's shown as a mummiform god with an erect phallus. You can see that all throughout temple walls in ancient Egypt. So this wouldn't have been considered pornographic for the ancient Egyptians, but rather a representation of his fertile aspects. So almost as if the phallus is a hieroglyph marking his fertility.
As we'll see, this theme of fertility is a common thread across time and civilizations. Far across the globe, another religion still worships what may be the greatest phallic god of them all. The city of Varanasi, on the banks of the Ganges, is one of the great centers of pilgrimage in all of India. Millions come to bathe in its waters and worship the city's chief god, Shiva. This is Shiva, and this is his lingam, an object of adoration to his worshippers and a symbol of his power and vitality.
Many Hindus will worship the lingam, and Varanasi is the city of lingams. Like every courtyard, every temple, every time you turn around, you'll see a lingam. There are literally lingams everywhere.
Shiva is a god who is a god of life, if you like, and is full of energy and power. He has virya, and that's depicted in the Shiva linga. On one level, it is indeed the phallic form of Shiva, and that's recognized in the Shaiva scriptures. But for ordinary devotees, the Shiva linga is an object of great veneration and devotion, and is more akin to a crucifix, perhaps. The word linga itself refers to the phallus, but it also means sign or symbol, which is quite interesting in itself.
Here's my lingam that I have in the office. It's a very simple form, and many of the Shiva lingams are just as simple as this, and smaller and larger and so forth. It has painted on it the marks of a worshipper of Shiva, the 3 marks across the forehead, and it is situated inside the symbol of the yoni, which is the female correspondent to the male part of the Shiva lingam. And the way people would worship it, they would do puja to it, as they would to an image of a god that had a face and arms. You would offer it flowers, and the lingam is said to generate heat, and so you keep it cool by pouring water on it. And every worshiper of Shiva has a lingam in some form. This is just the one that I happen to have here.
But Hinduism isn't the only living religion today that features phallic symbolism. Further east, in the land of the rising sun, practitioners of Shinto also have a long tradition.
I've watched businessmen do this on the way to work. They'll be running to work to try to catch the train, but they'll stop for a couple minutes in front of a Shinto shrine, wash their hands, wash out their mouth, clap, be there silently, clap again, and leave. And this is just ubiquitous in Japan.
Shrines are indeed an integral part of everyday life, providing a respite from the daily hustle and bustle, a place where old and young alike pray for success, health, and fertility. Shrines also serve as a focal point for the country's many festivals.
One of the festivals that's probably the best known amongst foreigners in Japan anyway is the so-called Phallus Festival at Komaki near Nagoya. This consists of taking a huge wooden phallus around the town, and a lot of the participants also carry phalluses themselves. One particular aspect that I enjoyed when I was there was a row of 32-year-old unmarried women all of them nursing quite a substantial big phallus in their arms, which they parade to the shrine to get the blessings of the kami for marriage and fertility in their marriage. One of the aspects of Shinto as a nature religion is the cultivation of fertility in the crops and in human beings because of passing on to the next generation what has been learnt and the gift of life itself. Part of that fertility rite is, like in India, the physical manifestation in phallus worship. Before Meiji times, that's to say before 1868, carvings, statues, rock representations of penises were common throughout the whole of Japan. Now, after 1868, when the Meiji government wanted to modernize and to look good in Western eyes, these were all smashed and removed. Not all of them, because you can still find some in rural areas, but generally, I would imagine about 90% of them were just obliterated.
The phallus lives on in Japan through Shinto and its shrine culture. But, unfortunately, its demise most everywhere else in the world is another common theme in the story of the phallus. As Christianity and colonialism spread, phallic symbols were erased. Today, it's hard to find any trace of it in the European continent, save a few faint vestiges. Here, in the northern Greek town of Tyrnavos, a tradition tracing its roots to the ancient phallic processions of Dionysus has been revived, despite the opprobrium of the church. The Greek festival may lack some of the somber ceremonial aspects of its Japanese counterpart, but it's one hell of a party. Further west in Europe, traces of phallic symbolism are increasingly difficult to find. The Cernobos giant in southern England is a notable exception, but its origins are something of a mystery. Were they Druids, Romans, or 18th century pranksters who carved this brute into the hillside? Nobody knows. Across the Atlantic, in North America, the prospects are even more bleak. An unlikely group of phallic worshippers can be found here, in the French-Canadian province of Quebec. On this quiet street, in this unassuming two-story residence, is the Montreal chapter of St. Priapus.
My name is David Francis Cassidy. I'm the Pontifex and High Priest of Priapus. The Temple of Priapus is a way of calling like-minded people who are interested in phallic worship, and using the phallus is a way of liberating themselves to develop a spiritual connection with the phallus. Grant me, my Lord, the privilege to receive the sacrament of the Most Holy Seed, Let me drink of your precious juices, and let me honor you as we serve our priests, bringing them joy of sexual fulfillment and thus joining with the brotherhood of the cock. Amen. The phallus is one sense unique. Everybody has one that's male, but there's no two alike, like a fingerprint. Bring the joy of cock to all our senses: sight, taste, smell, feel. The phallus for a man, in most cases, is what helps define what a man is. Time which has no time between this world and beyond. Once men find a comfort factor and not a designation that you don't have to be gay to enjoy the phallus. Straight men have been enjoying it for a long time, but they haven't allowed themselves to think about it and grow with it in a more organized spiritual sense. You lords of the East, you lords of air, carry the love of cock to all our senses. That's been part of our roles, helped to bring that form of liberation to people. Naked we stand, proudly showing our cocks, the staff of life. Priapus, cock and balls, together they represent the living Trinity. Let us worship at your altar. Spread your legs to better reveal the joy of man, your cock and balls.
From the god Min in Egypt and Shiva in India, to the fertility festivals in Japan and Greece, and finally this basement temple in Montreal. The significance of the phallus has steadily diminished over time in most of the world. This has been in large part due to the rise and spread of Christianity around the globe, its displacement, and in many cases, destruction of phallic imagery and of all things pagan. The major monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, play a central role in our next chapter as we look at a tradition with roots as ancient as those of phallic worship. Once again, we have to go back to ancient Egypt to trace it to its earliest origins.
The ancient Egyptians definitely practiced circumcision, and in fact, they used this as one of the markers of being an Egyptian. One of the ways we know this is through numerous representations in art, and even the hieroglyph for a phallus is always shown circumcised. So for the Egyptians, the ideal phallus was one that was circumcised. And they note when foreigners are not circumcised. A great example of this actually is following the aftermath of a battle around 1208 BC between the Egyptians and the Libyans. In order to count the enemy dead, the usual practice was to take a hand. But because the Libyans were uncircumcised, they cut off the phalli from the dead enemies in order to count them. And they specifically state in the text that they are phalli that are not circumcised, that still have their foreskins. And so we know from multiple representations in texts that circumcision was an inherent Egyptian cultural practice.
But it would be the Jews who turned it into the mark of a people.
There's no question that circumcision was practiced by some groups in the ancient Near East before it began to be part of Judaism. But the Torah tells us that God spoke to Abraham and commanded him to perform circumcision as a sign of the covenant between what would become the people of Israel, namely Abraham and his family, and God. And as time goes on, this is fully developed as a sense that circumcision of males is the symbol of this covenant between God and Israel.
God creates a partnership. He leaves it up to us to complete the human being, in this case, the male. So we become God's partners, and it's literally a bodily sign of our commitment to that relationship on an ethical, moral level, in terms of ethical perfection, and on a philosophical level, in terms of intellectual perfection.
Exactly how the ritual must be performed is laid out in detail in the Torah.
classical Jewish tradition, the circumcision, otherwise known as Brit or Bris, the covenantal ceremony, takes place on the 8th day, counting inclusively after birth. There is the ritual itself, namely in which some experienced, practiced individual will cut off the foreskin from the baby boy. It is a very festive occasion, even though most of the men there will stand around nervously. There is a risk, a small risk, but there is a risk of danger, complication, infection, blood loss, and the rest. So it is at one and the same time an occasion for excitement, an occasion for nervous anticipation. The baby will go through the ritual that Jewish male babies have been going through for millennia. On the other hand, there's also a tinge of nervousness and worry, frankly. And any parent who tells you that they're not a little bit worried, I think, are deceiving themselves.
It's taken in stride in ways that might seem to outsiders to be very strange. And that's because of its symbolism and holiness, which is in the entire Jewish community. Really, from all groups within the Jewish community, it remains a major, major part of being a Jew.
From ancient Judea to modern-day Israel, circumcision is an integral aspect of Judaism. Islam, founded by the Prophet Muhammad long after Judaism and 600 years after Christ, also adopted circumcision, though in a somewhat less central role.
Circumcision is Abraham's traditions. It's been practiced by the Prophet Abraham, or Ibrahim in Arabic language. And the Holy Quran says, وَاتَّبِعُوا مِلَّةَ Ibrahim, and follow the faith of Abraham. The Prophet Muhammad, in fact, later on stressed upon the importance of circumcisions, and it is consensusly agreed by the Muslim scholars that it is obligatory upon all Muslim males to be circumcised.
But in Christianity, the story is quite different.
Jesus was Jewish. He was born to a Jewish mother. He went to the temple. He did all these things that Jews do. So as a Jewish male, we assume he was circumcised.
The circumcision of Jesus somehow, paradoxically, means not that we Christians are to circumcise our own sons, imitating Christ, rather that the circumcision of Jesus somehow brings to an end Jewish circumcision. This will become the standard Christian argument.
If Christianity was going to insist on circumcision for all Christians, this was a major impediment to the growth of the church outside its Jewish roots. St. Paul very cleverly came up with the idea that circumcision of the heart was sufficient, which meant that you didn't actually have to be physically circumcised. And that was a key event in the transmission of Christianity from its Jewish roots to the Roman Empire.
The division is clearly there. Christianity instituted baptism as its replacement for circumcision.
Though Christians rejected the practice of circumcision, they did have to contend with the thorny theological notion that a piece of their Lord's flesh had been removed at birth. Many abbeys and monasteries across medieval Europe claimed to house the holy foreskin.
At the same time, other Christians are saying this is not possible. The only flesh and blood that there can be is on the altar. And so we have one story that when Jesus was resurrected on the third day after the crucifixion, and when his physical body went up to heaven, the foreskin, wherever it had been, zipped up with him. And now he is in heaven intact.
It makes sense that Israel and a large portion of the Muslim world have high rates of circumcision based on what we have seen in this segment. But why then does the United States, a so-called Christian nation, have one of the highest rates of circumcision when Christianity expressly rejected the practice? More than half of male babies born today are circumcised, and at its height in the middle of the 20th century, the rate reached nearly 90%. Meanwhile, South America, many people have never even heard of the practice. This is because it was the medical establishment that influenced the rise of circumcision in the United States. And a key event in this evolution took place in the 19th century, here in New York City. In the Victorian era, the medical profession was coming into its own. Doctors had become trusted and revered members of society. One in particular, an original founder of the Bellevue Hospital Medical College, was this man, Dr. Louis D. Sayre. Sayre was a well-renowned surgeon who believed that circumcision could, in some cases, cure paralysis. His was not the first nor last claim of circumcision's wondrous potential, but it came at a time when the practice was beginning to gain support as a medical procedure. Among many of Sayre's more moralistic contemporaries, masturbation was seen as a malicious vice that could cause all manner of ailments, including epilepsy and insanity. Prominent figures in American society, including Dr. Harvey Kellogg, the inventor of cornflakes, and Sylvester Graham of Graham cracker fame, promoted bland, healthy diets and circumcision as deterrents to masturbation. But the real change would take place nearly a century later, when a generation of American GIs returned from the war. During their service, many had been encouraged to get circumcisions if they weren't already circumcised. This was believed to reduce the transmission of venereal disease and promote general hygiene. Now, back in civilian life, they would choose to have their sons circumcised on an unprecedented scale. Through the 1950s, as midwifery and home births waned and the hospital system flourished, medical insurance began to cover circumcision, and the practice became normalized in American society.
Meat is a favorite with almost everyone, everywhere.
Now, uncircumcised males were in the minority. Fast forward to the 21st century, and things have changed significantly. Growing skepticism of medical circumcision has led to its decline nationwide and the emergence of an anti-circumcision movement, largely based on the East and West coasts. In 2011, these intactivists decided to take legal action.
These stacks of petitions carry the signatures of San Francisco residents who want to ban the practice of circumcising baby boys.
It's totally unnecessary, it's excruciatingly painful, and it's harmful.
Shouldn't parents be able to make that decision?
Well, we think the owner of the penis should be able to make the decision.
The American Academy of Pediatrics says the medical benefits of circumcision are not significant enough for the Academy to recommend the procedure.
The problem is banning my right or somebody else's right outright to practice what has been a ritual practice for years.
Needless to say, the proposed ballot measure stirred controversy.
We got over 12,000 signatures of people. They're unequivocally supportive of restricting infant circumcision. People can't say, oh, this is just a couple of fringe people or crazies that are against this.
Well, the reaction was mixed. There was some saying that, this is crazy, why are we doing this? This is a parent's right. And of course, others were very much in favor of it. Otherwise we wouldn't have been able to gather that many signatures. But we got significant pushback from the Jewish community, in particular the Jewish Community Relations Council.
We were stunned when we saw this ballot measure. It would have made it a criminal offense, punishable by up to a year in county jail and a fine of up to $1,000 for any physician or mohel to perform circumcision.
It violates the First Amendment because you cannot force people to have to go before the public and defend their religious practices that way. The reason for this is that we're both trying to protect people's religion, and also we're trying to protect the state from getting torn into divisive controversies about people's religious faith. That's the theory of our First Amendment.
Circumcision is a violation of human rights in my opinion and in the opinion of many people working on this issue, because the infant has not agreed to have it done on them by definition and violates numerous human rights, documents that the U.S. and other countries are signatories to, and yes, it's against the law.
This is San Francisco. We don't care what you are, we care who you are. People are very questioning and don't just follow tradition, especially if it's going to be harmful. So people really get this issue on a one-to-one basis. It certainly scared the opposition, who spent over $100,000, obtained free legal representation from one of the most prestigious international law firms based in San Francisco, Morrison and Foerster. Their email addresses all start with mofo.com. So these were pretty severe people, and up until the day that I arrived in court for our final court hearing, I did not have an attorney.
I had not heard of the intactivist community. I knew that there was some opposition to circumcision. I did not realize, personally, I didn't realize it was an organized group with its own websites, its own publications, its own political action.
Despite their relatively limited resources and the negative reaction of San Francisco's Jewish and Muslim minorities, public support of the intactivist ban remained strong. Until, that is, Deborah Saunders of the San Francisco Chronicle introduced the world to Foreskin Man.
A source told me about this comic book, Foreskin Man, and I went online and I looked at it, and I was shocked. I mean, you had this blonde Aryan hero, you had this slimy, oily rabbi going after the babies.
And who was the creator of the controversial comic book? None other than the author of the proposed bill to ban circumcision in San Francisco, Matthew Hess.
The number one accusation was that Foreskin Man is anti-Semitic. I think what the problem was is that they didn't realize that we're against circumcision of all boys, not just Jewish boys. You know, issue number 1 was about medicalized circumcision, and issue number 3 was about tribal circumcision. That had nothing to do with Jewish circumcision. A lot of people were upset when they saw these images, but I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take direct criticism to really get any sort of change to happen. And people are talking about it. Countries are now trying to enact legislation. Doctors groups are coming out against it. This all came after the Foreskin Man comic book series was published. So in my mind, it's been a success.
Once people saw that, that measure was done. It was over. Nobody, this city does not want to engage in that kind of vile caricature.
Because of the sensitivity, which is completely understandable, it turned into this big media circus, and it really distracted from the main issue. And then we weren't talking about the issue anymore. We were talking about this other thing.
I think we opened up the discussion on an international level, and once the discussion started, it's like the genie, it can't be put back in the bottle.
The measure never made it to the ballot. A San Francisco judge threw it out on a technicality. Subsequently, the California State Assembly passed a bill prohibiting any future ballot measures in California regulating the practice of circumcision. However, the anti-circumcision movement continues its struggle in other states.
No medical excuse for genital abuse.
Girls are protected. Why aren't boys? Don't they have day jobs?
And although it's unlikely that any laws will pass regulating circumcision in the United States, it's clear that the practice is losing some of its mainstream acceptance.
Infant circumcision, it's not your decision.
In 2012, on the other side of the Atlantic, in Germany, where less than 5% of males are circumcised, one of the country's regional courts actually went so far as to ban circumcision. This took place in Cologne, on the banks of the Rhine. a city known for its history, trendy shopping, modern amenities, and liberal attitude. An unlikely flashpoint for a culture war. It began with the circumcision of a Turkish Muslim boy in Cologne. In Turkish tradition, boys are often circumcised at 4 to 8 years of age. In this particular case, complications led to a trip to hospital. Subsequently, a complaint was filed, and although the surgeon was absolved of any wrongdoing, circumcision itself was ruled unlawful by Cologne's regional court.
Ja, wir waren sehr überrascht über dieses Urteil, weil dieses Urteil ist eins, was sich gegen die Religionsfreiheit ausspricht, was eine Praxis, die mehrere tausend Jahre die Menschheit kennt, plötzlich kriminalisiert.
Das akzeptieren wir nicht.
Ich möchte, dass mein Sohn beschnitten wird. Das gehört zu unserer Religion, zu unserer Kultur.
Das ist Tradition, das kann keiner auf dieser Welt ändern einfach.
Cologne as a whole was not a hotbed of anti-Semitism, but there were certainly ripples under the surface of anti-Islam. And there had been demonstrations whether or not to allow a big mosque with a big tower to be constructed.
Any restrictions on Muslim circumcision, of course, would also affect the country's Jews.
Auch jüdische Organisationen halten das Urteil für falsch, die Auswirkungen gravierend.
Für uns sind jetzt die Politiker gefragt, die immer sich darauf berufen. Wir haben hier das christliche und jüdische Fundament für diese Republik.
With a population of just 100,000, compared to nearly 2 million Muslims, Germany's Jewish minority nevertheless carried enormous political weight, both at home and internationally.
Germany should be the last country to have a debate on this general issue. The debate on circumcision has to be judged by what happened to German Jews in the Third Reich.
What is it specifically about German history that could make this issue problematic?
Oh, I would rather not talk about that because that is a very delicate subject, and I get along with my English, but if it comes to this, I want to be perfect, and I don't feel comfortable speaking about this topic in a foreign language. I'm sorry.
We have a traditional anti-Semitic, or how you say this? Anti-Semitic background. I don't think that this is the situation, but it's strange. It's strange for the common Germans, circumcision, to perform circumcision.
Unmittelbar nach der Entscheidung des Landgerichts Köln gab es eine große Empörung, die vor allem von jüdischer Seite geäußert wurde. Und so war es normal und zu erwarten, dass international auch sofort eine große Kritikwelle einsetzte. Diese Kritikwelle, die basierte allerdings auf dem Missverständnis, dass es sich hier um eine antijüdische oder antimuslimische Entscheidung gehandelt hat. Obwohl das nicht der Fall war, gab es diese Kritik aus dem Ausland und das hat eine durchaus massive Rolle gespielt, einen durchaus massiven Druck ausgeübt auf die politisch Verantwortlichen in Deutschland.
Ultimately, this pressure caused Angela Merkel and her Conservative Party to move a law through Germany's parliament to protect circumcision. The law was passed by a majority in the fall of 2012. Whether the efforts in San Francisco or Germany to restrict circumcision had any anti-Semitic or anti-Islamic motivation is a matter of debate. But what's clear is that the controversy over circumcision isn't just limited to the United States. Our chapter on circumcision comes to a close in South Korea, one of the most recent and enthusiastic adopters of the practice. Here, as much as 80% of the male population is circumcised, but the reasons why may surprise you.
South Korean circumcision began in the year 1945 with the arrival of American troops in the Korean soil. At that time, Koreans equalized America with modernization, westernization, development, and so on. So it was pretty clear that, okay, we want to develop, we want to be like Americans. Americans are circumcised, we should too.
However, Korean circumcision differs from the American medical practice in one very significant detail.
Korean boys get circumcised at around age of 10 or 12. Somehow they created this age of 12 as the proper age for boys to be circumcised.
저만 안 하면은 남들과 다르게 되는 게 놀림을 받고 이런 게 두려워가지고 그렇게 결정하게 되었습니다. 포경수술을 할 때 나이가 9살이었는데 포경수술을 할 때 이제 포경수술이 끝나고 나서 일단 기분이 일단 너무너무 좋지 않았고 이제 포경수술을 하고 나서 이제 컵을 여기다 씌워야 이게 닿지 않게 손에 닿지 않게 해서 걸을 때도 되게 좀 조심스럽게 걸었던 기억이 있고 바로 이제 부모님이 이제 말씀대로 이제 바로 선물 사러 장난감 사러 갔던 기억이 있는데 장난감을 고를 때 기분이 너무 좋지 않았어요. 왜냐면 느낌 자체가 마취가 끝난 이후에도 아프기도 아픈데 그냥 처음 느껴보는 느낌이고 그냥 왠지 그냥 모르겠어요. 어떤 그냥 뭐라고 말로 설명하기가 좀 그런데 너무 그냥 이상하고 좋지 않았어요.
I don't remember who exactly said it, but they said it would make it bigger after the surgery. And at that time, I was pretty naive, so I wasn't sure why that was a benefit. But I do remember distinctly that that was brought up to me by someone. It's almost like the military service here. It's something that everyone has to do. Of course, you don't want to do it, and you know there is a lot of pain in store for you, but you just do it because everyone else does it. And you don't give that much thought into it. And it's much better that way because the more you think about it, the more fear you're going to generate in yourself.
Understanding the reasons why circumcision has persisted in South Korea is difficult. Whether it symbolizes a rite of passage to manhood, or an exclusive mark of modernity, or whether it's just a meaningless, arbitrary tradition being carried on, is hard to say. Much like Japan, Korean culture is rife with manifestations of phallic symbolism. On the coast, 4 hours east of Seoul, is this place, Hishingdong Park, built in honor of an old legend.
해신당의 의미는요, 바다 해자, 귀신 신자, 집당자입니다. 그 유래는요, 이 마을에 살던 에랑이라는 처녀가 바다에 해초 떠들어 갔다가 갑자기 풍랑이 일었어요. 빠져 죽게 되었습니다. 이 처녀 죽은 다음부터 마을에 조업을 나가면 계속 사고가 생기고 고기가 안 잡히게 되었어요. 그래서 마을 사람들이 결혼 못한 처녀가 남자한테 한이 맺혔다고 생각하게 되었죠. 그래서 살아있는 남자를 제물로 못하니까 대신 나무를 가지고 남자 생식기 모양 깎아놓고 제사를 지내주게 되었는데 그 후로부터 마을도 평안해지고 고기도 많이 잡혔다라는 전설이 전해지는 곳입니다.
The earliest purpose of circumcision may have been something similar, an offering being given from the body, perhaps in place of human sacrifice. But the reasons why it is practiced today are varied, as we have seen. From the religious, to the medical, to less definable cultural reasons, it has remained a part of the human story for thousands of years. No film about the penis would be complete without touching on the subject of our last chapter. The question of size has been one for the ages, but the answer hasn't always been the same. For the ancient Greeks, a small penis was considered to be aesthetically superior. And even their mightiest gods are a little less than godlike below the waist. Depictions of large, erect phalluses were reserved for base, barbaric creatures, like these satyrs, whose incessant drinking and dancing represented a sinful lifestyle. But things have certainly changed a lot since then. Each year, the luminaries and lackeys of the adult industry come to Las Vegas for the Adult Entertainment Expo. No industry has been more central in enshrining the oversized penis in the American pantheon of obsessions.
I feel like in porn, size does matter. Just because you're shooting at different angles that you want to be able to catch the penetration.
If you have a very small dick, you can't come off of the pussy enough for everybody to be able to see what's happening.
Well, most male performers are between 7 and 10 inches, I've noticed. I don't think I've worked with anyone below 7.
The average penis length amongst the general populace is between 5 and 6 inches erect. For male porn stars, it's something closer to 8.
It's a problem made up by our culture and our media, especially in America, with sexuality and everything having to be big, big, big to be good, good, good. You know, that's just how it is.
Size matters in the business. I would say size wouldn't necessarily matter in a personal relationship if he knew what he's doing.
Average, I love it. I don't want to be hurt. I want to be able to go for a long period of time without ripping. So men, don't worry about your penis size.
Like, I'm not by any means a size queen. I get enough big dick at work, you know, but you know, I like a nice penis attached to a nice man.
But regardless of what these porn stars say, or what any women say for that matter, the obsession with size remains ubiquitous amongst men. Just a quick visit to one's email junk folder reveals a host of pills, pumps, and procedures that claim to increase penis size. And with it, they promise a life-changing boost of confidence. But for those of us who aren't porn stars, what's life really like being hung like a horse? We met with a New Yorker who has a thing or two to say on the subject. Jonah Falcon, contrary to what you might think when you hear his name, is not a porn star, but he does have a 14-inch penis.
It's true, I've got a big one, it's the biggest one around. If you're lucky, I can show it off and you can go to town.
The reactions that I get from people who see me in bike shorts, if they don't know who I am, the one question is always, is that real? And I say, well, there's one way to show you that it's real, and either they accept it or not. I mean, I will whip it out on occasion just to show, yeah, it's real. If someone is really cute, I'll let them reach in and grab it to make sure it's real. You know, feeling is believing. Feeling is believing. A lot of men derive confidence from their size if they're large. For me, I don't have the confidence because I have insecurities in other places, so if it's not one thing, it's the other, basically. The penis is not the magic bullet. You're just trading one insecurity for another, in my opinion. And it's funny is no one's recognized me. Despite, the camera and stuff like that. Okay, well, maybe I'm not wearing tight enough jeans. Or at least, I can imagine what happened if you asked me to wear the bike shorts here. You know, my name is Jonah, and I got a giant boner all the ladies and the guys seem to want. I caught you looking in your peeping and trying to be creeping on the bullshit I'm trying to flaunt. Too damn big, it's just too damn big. My penis too damn big, it's too damn big.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, and the other side of town, is this man, Nicholas Jill Ronan, the winner of Brooklyn's first annual Smallest Penis competition, held at Kings County Bar in Bushwick.
As soon as I won, they put the crown on me. One of the girls who worked the event came up and I thought she was going to kiss me on the cheeks. She went right for the mouth. That was a lot of fun. I'm not going to be confused with Brad Pitt or anybody like that, but as my own person, I'm a pretty good-looking person. Not to sound too vain. The media might want to say I'm not a good-looking person because I'm a bit overweight, or my penis size is not up to par with their standards. But that doesn't really bother me. I go through my life, every day is a good day. My relationships, I've never had a problem with that. Penis size probably matters to some women, but just as there are vain men who won't date a girl who's a little chubby or too tall or too short or whatever the reasons they have for judging a person based on their appearance, there are definitely women out there who do the exact same thing. Personality is much more important than body, physique, figure, penis size, body shape, all that stuff. Personality is always the most important thing in any relationship.
Unfortunately, not all less endowed men can adopt Nicholas's live and let live attitude. Here, in San Diego, our central protagonist in this story of size is taking matters into his own hands.
My name is Michael Chavez. I'm 47 years old. I have a daughter who's 24 years old, and I've always been single. I have never been married. I am actually proceeding with a penis augmentation surgery and looking to increase the length and circumference of my penis. I dated a girl when I was in my 30s, and she actually left me due to the fact that she flat out told me she found a guy with a bigger penis. We went on a couple dates, and then our first sexual encounter afterwards, she goes, Michael, I can't do it anymore. I need somebody with a larger penis. You know, and I know that I'm not like some microscopic guy out there, but I'm, you know, some girls just prefer a guy with a larger dick. Women in general, they say that there's not a problem with the size of a man's penis, but there really is. I mean, if they had a chance to have sex with a guy with a 4-inch penis as opposed to an 8-inch penis, they're gonna jump on that 8-inch penis all day long before that 4-inch penis.
Michael is joined in his desire for enlargement surgery by his twin brother Joe.
I doubt that's gonna happen.
I want to be your stunt cock.
Like probably like about I was 27, 30 is when I really felt that. It was just it just felt like I don't know. To be honest with you, my girl was kind of cheating on me a lot, so it just made me feel insecure about myself that, you know, maybe something needs to change with me because, you know, she wouldn't be going off and cheating on me and stuff like that.
So, yeah, I think so. I don't see why not.
I mean, it wasn't until recently that, you know, I got him to actually go, okay, let's see the size of yours. And we compared the size of each other's penises. And we're both pretty much the same. So the standing joke is, you know, if I do meet a girl, I say that my brother has the other half of my penis.
I've never, like, seen you as a person that was really, like, insecure or anything like that. And I was like, yeah. But I mean, I guess everyone has the same kind of insecurities.
I would have to say that I'm not insecure. I would just love to have a little bit more down there.
That's true. Yeah. Maybe it's not insecure, but, you know, it's...
I just saw Mike's wiener and it's pretty little. I did. Let's show him again on the camera, Mike.
He'll see it soon.
All right.
As soon as I told Joe that I was going to get it done, I immediately went and called my daughter and said, hey, can I talk to you when you get off work today? And we went for a walk together.
Some ladies want boob jobs, some ladies want lip jobs or whatever. You know, too many wrinkles, and they want to take care of those. And this is something that's bugged me for many years, so now I have that opportunity to do it, so I'm just going to go for it. So.
Well, that's cool. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too.
No, this will be fine. So you don't have to be scared or anything. It's going to go fast.
After extensive research, the twins sought out Dr. James Ellis to Beverly Hills to perform the surgery. Dr. Ellis offers his own exclusive patented procedure that, for Michael and Joe, offers benefits not attainable through other techniques. After an initial consultation, the twins head to Los Angeles for Michael's surgery.
Thank you.
Before proceeding, Michael is carefully measured and photographed.
Okay. Very good. Give me measurement from the 3¼ All the measurements are in the flaccid. Okay. This is one of the sample of subcutaneous penile implant. A very, very soft silicone. It bends easily. This is something, which has been, I think, built in the mankind, in their mind, that always, if you have more, is better. Which is most of the time we know and we see is not true, but that's the desire. That's the personal desire. That's the man's desire.
Oh, shit. I have no hair. Why do they even need this?
This is the consent that say that the procedure you're having is the insertion of subcutaneous penile implant. You can sign.
Okay.
If you want, you can read it first.
Okay.
And then sign and put the date.
Okay, I'm saying.
Having a twin, I could just say you first, and that's good, and see the process and see how it goes, and it was kind of good. I got to see all these things ahead of time.
So now I'm gonna go under.
In a few minutes.
Yeah,
yes.
the medication is going in.
Are you ready? I'm ready. Okay, ready. That's good that you're ready.
My little penis.
Originally he was here, and now he's here.
More here, more here, more here, more here.
time.
Come on, one more time here.
Michael, how you doing? Are you awake?
Yeah,
Good, good.
Okay.
You're gonna be transferred to the
All right,
recovery.
very good.
Sorry.
We're going to recovery room, Michael. Take a deep breath, Michael. Everything is fine.
Months later, the pain has subsided, but Michael is experiencing some complications.
It's been about 4 months now since I've had the surgery with Dr. Elist, and unfortunately now I'm dealing with an infection.
Here, this is what's going on since the infection.
All right.
So this was a lot more swollen, and now it's kind of gone down a little bit.
Now the doctors are saying it's going to go back to normal?
Yeah, it should just take a little bit more time, but it kind of just looks funky right now.
Okay, I'm going to have to check it out every few days and make sure it's good.
I know that the doctor did a good job with me. I know that the implant was done properly in itself. But for me personally, I'm still on the I really am on the fence about this. I really am. Well, I thought that I would be able to make myself feel better if women were to see my bigger penis. But now that I have a bigger penis, could I have gone without the operation? Absolutely. Was I perfect the way I was before? Absolutely. I had a nice looking penis before, it was just smaller. That's really what it comes down to. And that really probably hits home more than anything that I've done right now. It's like I was perfect before.
As filming ended, Michael's infection had cleared up, and he was feeling better about the look and feel of his penis. Not one to be left behind, his brother Joe planned to follow suit and get the procedure too. As surgical methods advance, it seems the demand for penile enhancement will only continue to grow. And surgeons in the field imagine a future where they are as common and plentiful as breast implants. From ancient Greece to Los Angeles, the question of size has been definitively answered for our age. Bigger is better. To prove that the desire for a bigger penis isn't just an American phenomenon, we end our story in Dubai, where another set of twins are bringing penile surgery to the East. Doctors Maurizio and Roberto Viel, Italian-born maestros of penile augmentation, bring a decidedly artistic flair to their pursuit.
Our mother was an opera singer. We used to go to the Scala Opera House to see all the opera. So
but that was something good for us because it gave us the idea, especially our mother, a very focus on beauty, in aesthetic, in arts. It gave us since a young age. Now we do something in surgery that reflect what basically has been our family, our background.
What we do in aesthetic plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery is an artistic world. And we try not to change the body, to sculpture the body, to make the body look better, and at the same time give a better life to the patient.
I think that the greatest artist of all is Leonardo. Leonardo da Vinci, probably, in my opinion, is my hero, my best. His description of anatomy, his drawings of anatomy is an example of beauty, proportion, harmony, the willingness to understand, to study, to see. And something that even it was centuries ago, but we should have this kind of desire to look, to understand why.
Just as Leonardo da Vinci illustrated with his Vitruvian Man, the penis sits at the center of man's universe. It is his link through the generations, the family jewels, his most dear and valuable treasure, affectionately nicknamed Johnson, Willie, Jimmy, or John Thomas. It's also known as a baby maker, the purple-headed monster, skin flute, chode, ding dong, the albino cave dweller, custard launcher, beef whistle, wiener, monkey wrench, wedding tackle, trouser tumor, whoopee stick, yogurt gun, todger, tinker, tallywhacker, shaft, schmeckle, schwanz, pecker, one-eyed trouser snake, old fellow, python of love, meat injection, lap rocket, knob, joystick, member, longfellow, Excalibur, the bald butler, bishop, tree of life, the pudding pump, crotch vomiter, wrinkle beast, dork, donut holder, Pied Piper, pecker, love muscle, dipstick, Dr. Feelgood, the Duke, and Dick.